she will have different videos about what makes a high value man.
Yeah.
And she'll say he needs to make 6 figures for at least 3 years, things of this nature. Where, can you imagine, again, a guy who was that specific versus this guy's just saying like, hey, I like big boobs and blondes, who doesn't like that, And so he's not saying she has to have the exact hip waist ratio 0.7 because that's the the ideal woman.
Yeah.
And she has to have an IQ of 130.
Hey guys, welcome to the Emily and Todd Podcast. Today we are talking about preferences when dating, and is it okay to talk openly or is it not okay to talk openly about those preferences? Before we get started, please remember to like and comment under this video as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. So Todd, I wanted to talk about this today because there's a little bit of a controversy going on right now in social media with Matt Rife. For anyone that's not aware of this guy is a pretty up-and-coming comedian. He's got a lot of viral TikToks right now. And earlier in the year, about January, a TikTok of him went viral in which he was undoing his belt, right? And we can get into the details of that. But basically, like, a lot of women started sexualizing him. He's a really good-looking guy. He's extremely funny.
Yes.
So that kind of helps that, too. But just the fact of him, like, being able to undo the belt with one hand, it kind of caught fire with a lot of women loving it. Well, everything turned around and women really started going against him when a podcast episode came out in, I believe, February, where he was talking about what he prefers in a woman. And it was basically about how she looked. He said that he likes blonde and curvy and even really likes fake breasts. And women have been at him now, really going at, like, trying to cancel him because of him talking about these preferences.
Yes.
So we wanted to get into it today as to why is that? Why can't people openly talk about their preferences? Why is there even an issue, that women are having?
Well,
with it.
This is a perfect example of, I would guess, most women's kind of ideal guy.
Yeah.
To start off with.
He's
right?
young.
Because, he's
good
young.
Looking.
Young, but he's not too young.
Not too young.
He's like probably late 20s, if I had to guess, mid-20s maybe.
Probably, yeah.
And definite, like, Chad guy. And I actually heard one of it was on TikTok, one of his sets about, like, owning the fact that he's pretty. Have you seen this one?
I don't know if I've caught that one.
And how that a lot of times that it's very difficult for different reasons. So he's definitely, I agree with you. He's like this really good looking guy. And he's also this guy who is extremely intelligent and funny. So he's got the kind of trifecta going on. So when he did that move, which was, kind of a joke, it got repurposed essentially as a thirst trap, and it created lots of female simps, right? That were simping for this guy essentially.
They were, yeah.
And then he goes on this podcast and he talks about his preferences, which were pretty specific as well. And as a result of that, that's not most women.
No,
for example, it's a very specific type that I would argue that probably most guys would agree with them to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And what happened after that, you described really well, is that women are up in just arms about this. So he's describing his specific preferences for himself. He's not saying all guys like this. And all of a sudden, all these women start coming out of the woodwork talking about, don't talk about our bodies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, like as if he said anything to do with cutting women down to just their bodies. Like that wasn't even the question. I mean, the question that was targeted towards him was, what do you like physically in a woman?
And I when I viewed that podcast, I really believe that he was like pretty much half joking when he was talking about the breast implant part.
He was. You could tell.
You could tell. Yeah, it's like he likes big boobs. Like, let's just get that out there.
Yeah.
And because even when he discussed about the fake boobs, he said, like, I want them to be as naturally looking as possible.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what he was describing is pretty much the hourglass figure that most guys are attracted to. And his only spin on that was that, honestly, it was like, I like blondes, the blonde version of that. So
Right.
he was essentially probably referring to a Caucasian woman who was blonde. And I think, a lot of women who don't fit that category, that's something that just really triggered them, because I think there was a realization that I could never get a guy like that. And I was just simping for him,
Yeah.
a month ago.
I know. It's kind of like when you're a teenager, right? And when I was a teenager and you're like simping for the boy band member and you find out that then he has a girlfriend and she looks nothing like you, right? Like you didn't even say anything, but it's like disappointing.
You thought you might have not you thought you might not have had a chance, and then it was confirmed.
It was confirmed. Yeah, exactly. And so women, I think, are triggered also by the fact that it's like blonde, big boobs. Like it's that like conventional beauty that has been put out into the world quite often. But there's
why
a
is
reason.
Why is it conventional? That's what I was going to ask.
Because the majority of men will like that.
Yes, exactly.
Right? At least at some point in history, that was the case. Because I think it would have been a different reaction if he said, like, I like darker skin and brown hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I like a girl with some meat on her, with some weight to her.
Yeah.
Like people would go insane for him then.
Oh yes, exactly. It would have been the opposite, situation going on.
Yeah.
Or if he especially if he said something where, he was like, I just love all women, doesn't matter what their shape or size or race or, that type of thing. I just love them. I can't get enough of them. Like, then he would be embraced. But when the guy, jokingly most of the time, but, they ask him a straight up question, he gives a response. And because he's got this platform and because, like you said, which I agree, all these women were simping for him before, then they came to this realization that this is a guy that wouldn't go for me.
Yeah.
And so maybe he's more representative of all guys who are maybe in that category to them.
Right. Because he is that, like maybe 10%er.
Oh, for sure.
And then that just reaffirms like the woman's fear that those top guys want a very specific look and they don't meet that look.
Yeah.
And that means maybe they can't get a guy that's like that.
Exactly. And that's the reality too.
Yeah.
Is that you're honestly not going to see a guy like that who has his resume. If that guy has a specific preference, he's going to have a huge variety to choose from within that group.
Which I think makes sense, right? But I saw another woman on TikTok saying like he shouldn't have these high preferences. He shouldn't get to say that because he's a man. Like, I mean, he does have these things in which has leveled him up. So why can't he have a preference for something that might be harder to obtain for a guy that doesn't have the qualities that he has? I mean, that I think just makes sense, logical sense, that when you level yourself up, that you would be expecting the same from a partner. So that's the type of partner you're going to seek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the reality too is that what he was referring to essentially is fertility cues. So, I mean, I'm sure he probably wasn't talking about 40-year-old women in that situation as well. He's probably talking about young women that came across as, very fertile. And that's something where there's a lot of guys who have that preference. It's not, it's very common actually. In some ways, I really believe that women who have a little bit more body fat, that actually can enhance their looks, where for a guy, it kills their looks.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Because with a woman, for example, let's say, she has wider hips or she has bigger boobs as a result of having a little bit more weight on her, but she still has that clear hourglass shape. Like guys are going to be like, let's do it. But with guys, it usually is the first place is like your face it goes to.
Yeah.
And then it goes to your belly.
Your stomach, yeah.
And so a guy with a big fat face and a big beer belly, which, for men would consider it a dad bod, and women wouldn't consider that. That's something that they're not going to be attracted to. And so he's saying, okay, what most guys are thinking.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the thing, right? Is that everybody has a type and everyone has preferences. I think we can all agree with that.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
But I think, it depends on the era too, because I can just tell you in my lifetime that the preferences that men have had towards women have changed. So, for example, like when I was a kid, what was kind of really in was really thin, all around kind of. And, that kind of changed, when the kind of Kardashians came on the scene. And, you kind of, right now, that's kind of the beauty standard. And, like having a big round booty, that wasn't something that was, like most white girls didn't have that.
No, that would be like a bad thing. Like even clothing that you'd purchase from the store would not like fit you right if you had too much weight in your booty.
Exactly. But nowadays, that's something where women are purposely trying, in the gym, doing squats, doing hip thrusts. I think most guys have kind of evolved, if that's a word we want to use, to then saying, wow, that does look good.
I could see that, especially like a guy that is young, like in his 20s. I think that whatever is being fed to him on media, social media even, like there's probably a huge impact on him as far as what he then determines to be highly desirable.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and this guy's specific preference, because this is another part of the podcast I remember, was that he just said that he likes boobs. Like, if you don't have any boobs, like, he doesn't, he's not going to be into you.
Yeah.
But the reality is that, first of all, this guy has the choice for that. And I could probably show him some women who don't have large boobs that he would probably be into.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, there's some gray area. It's bendable, that preference.
I think
it's not like a hard line.
Yeah.
And he does.
Because some women are just so beautiful that if they have small boobs, it's not going to be a killer. It's like having a dent in a Mercedes.
Totally. I can totally see that.
Yeah.
And this guy, he has a lot of options. He even was talking on one of his shows about how he doesn't even go into his DMs. Like, he does not look at them because they're just packed full.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like probably all women.
Exactly.
That are simping for him.
Yes, exactly. And so, and one of the things I asked you prior to us coming on the air was that, what was, kind of the standard woman that was getting upset with him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the Stacy types.
No, it was the opposite of what he was saying his preference was, right? Like dark-haired, a little bit overweight women is what I mostly saw, especially the one that went viral, where she was really hating on him and trying to get him canceled.
Yeah.
And saying that he should just stick to comedy and get off the podcast.
Yeah.
And why do we give men microphones? Like all the typical lines, right?
Exactly. But can you imagine that if that was reversed and a woman who was really attractive was just talking about some chat or something? Most guys would probably be like, yeah. It's
such a double standard. I know, you're right. The reaction from a man for a woman to say like, oh, I like a guy that has a six-pack and is 6 feet tall. Like, there's sometimes occasionally some pushback, especially with the height thing. I don't know if I ever see pushback against like the whole six-pack thing and getting in shape. Because guys know that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And they know that's like respectable. And so they don't blame a woman for desiring that potentially.
Yeah.
Especially if she's, a very attractive woman herself. Then any man, I think, will look at her and be like, oh, yeah, well, she has the options. So, of course, she's going to go for that guy. I'm just not that guy. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's such a different reaction.
Yeah. I think where guys get upset is when it's women, for example, who are overweight, and they are saying that they wouldn't date somebody that is overweight themselves. Or, because you've seen some of these different shows where they'll have a guys lined up and a woman lined up, and a woman will be like obese, and she'll like turn down these guys. And so I think that there's a lot of, and I think it's because of Instagram, it's because of Tinder. There's this, what's the word I'm looking for? Right now, women are experiencing a lot of delusion.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that they have so many options, they think that their worth is higher than it really is in the dating market.
Right. I can see that. And then that's where regular guys will probably get upset because it's illogical. They see that it's not working, and then they're seeing the impact that it does have directly on them.
Yes. But the reality is that guys are to blame for this. You know why? Because
Simping?
guys... No, well, that's in there. But guys, right now, the standard for guys is the floor. Guys are so desperate that they'll undercut each other in order to. So they'll hook up with these women that aren't conventionally attractive, overweight, whatever, but they won't get into relationships with them. And so a woman will feel like this is something that I can attain, but they can for sex, but for a relationship, probably not. No, why? Because the guy is honestly going to be embarrassed to bring him around his friends or his family.
Yeah.
If she isn't at least a looks match.
I can see that. And I think there's even different levels to that. Like a woman that might be close to a looks match to him, he might bring around friends and family. But like if he doesn't really like her personality, there's not that real like matchup, then is he ever going to marry her?
No.
Probably not.
He probably won't even be in a relationship with her. It
Right.
would just be, either something very casual or a one-night stand. But you're right. He's not going to bring around friends or family. It's going to be the combination of she can at least put, in public, put on, sound intelligent or interesting, and also be someone that he would proud to say that is his girlfriend or he's dating.
Yeah. So guys are willing to do that, but girls,
so guys will do that in the privacy of their own home.
Yeah.
And so what happens is I think that a lot of women now, they're feeling that their egos are inflated because of what's going on. And this is why I blame men for doing this. Instead of saying, you know what, I'm not attracted to that woman, and I'm not going to just go there sexually because I have these drives. I'm going to say to myself, if I'm going to date someone, I want to have authentic attraction for her.
Yeah, I totally think that can be happening, especially in the younger generation with hookup culture, right? But I think about my generation, a millennial, probably is not participating that much. Like a woman my age is probably not hooking up with a bunch of like younger, good-looking men and then getting, inflated in her thoughts of herself.
Probably not.
But she is probably on social media, and she is probably getting a lot of attention there. If
I don't know.
she's
You're
single
right
and
on
fit.
the cusp, though, Emily. Because
I don't know. You'd be surprised, I think.
Really? You think most late 30s women have Instagrams?
So maybe not so much on Instagram. I think they're on the older version of Facebook.
Yeah, but they're not setting up thirst traps or anything like that. They're
Not
usually
like crazy thirst traps, just like the selfies,
Really?
And then they'll get
to
random.
me, that's cringe, though.
It
For
is.
anybody
Oh, yeah.
who's like over a certain age should be doing that, male or female.
It is.
And so
I know
I
it
think
is,
it's
but I see
mostly
it.
younger women. Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you because this is your friends and this is, you're definitely more in tune with this than I am. And most of my friends are going to be a little bit older, but I definitely have, friends in their 30s as well. But I definitely think that this is more, kind of either mostly Zoomers and mixed in with some millennials as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but I think that's it's always been kind of like this to a certain degree. It's just, it's that whole argument of hypergamy is that guys will go down there where women will not.
Yeah, I can see that. And then I think, too, the other sensitive part that women have in this whole conversation when a man is talking about physical preferences is just the fact that he's talking about physical preferences.
Yes.
Right? And like, I see this all the time where women will not talk about their own physical preferences. They will like dodge any sort of question around it. Because this was another TikTok that I saw of a woman talking about Matt and saying, this is before the whole drama went down.
Okay.
She was saying that this is why women are going crazy over him. It's not because he has a six-pack. It's not because he has that amazing jawline. It's not because he's attractive, but it's because he asks women questions. So that is how he engages in his comedy, is he, asks questions of, typically they're women in the audience. And I don't think I've ever heard actually a man like respond to any of his questions.
Okay.
So all women, and he's asking questions and then follow-up questions. And it goes along with his comedy.
Yeah.
But this woman was like willing to just completely deny the fact that it was because of his looks.
Oh, jeez.
And that it was really just because of who he is as a person. And she said the rest of it was just the cherry on top.
Yeah, talked about virtue signaling. To me, that's a complete lie. It's the opposite way. It's that they're really attracted to him, and he was this guy who was very interactive, and he's very funny and smart and things like that.
Him being funny is the cherry on top.
Trust me, most comedians are not that attractive.
No,
at all. Like he's probably the most attractive comedian maybe ever. And so
actually, yeah.
And so if you look at a lot of the male. And I'm speaking about males right now, male comedians, a lot of times they're not attractive at all. And you never hear a woman talk about, oh, how sexy or, how, this guy is. And never would be a meme about, the short, I'm just thinking of one comedian off the top of my head. I don't remember his name, but he's like this short Jewish guy, and it's something that with him, it's like, the guy of their dreams that they would look up to and simp for is also interacting with them and, seems to have a really kind of good personality on top of things. So I just wish women would own that, saying, he's really good looking and he's really funny and he's really smart and we love his personality.
But it's like it's the opposite of that. So I don't know if they just have fully convinced themselves that it's nothing to do with looks, because they also don't want that from a man. They don't want a man to talk about only looks, right? Because they want a man to want them for something more than that, which I understand that. But there's still a physical nature to the relationship. So there's going to be that.
Yeah. Well, what's going to be the first attractor?
Right.
Especially, nowadays. It's exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think just being human, we're all going to try to attain the someone that has, first of all, let's talk a little bit about preferences right now. So, for example, if I talk about my preferences, it's actually different than Matt's. So for example, I don't like fake boobs at all. I look much more natural. And I'm a guy who really is into brunettes who have a darker skin tone.
There you go.
And so that's something that is very different than his, but at the same time, I'm not gonna, if what he was describing walked in my door, obviously I'm not going to turn that down. But it's not it's not my specific preference though.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking about that right now. So I'm not saying that all guys, because he's just a perfect example of a guy that varies from my personal preferences. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And
for me, if a woman has a boob job, a lot of times it's a turnoff.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of guys would actually agree with that. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I watched a little bit more of that podcast, that same one in which Matt was talking about his preferences. And one of the guys, because there were 3 guys total, one of the other guys was saying that he doesn't care about the size of boobs. He's like, he doesn't even care about them at all. He was joking, and he's like, yeah, I don't even like unclasp the bra. Like, the bra can stay on for all I care. And then there was like a little bit of back and forth between him and Matt, because Matt was like, what? He couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But that demonstrates that there's going to be differences. So why not just be willing to accept that any individual person, man, is going to be talking about what he likes. But as long as he's not talking and generalizing for all men, because obviously I think that would be problematic, just like I think that's problematic when women try to generalize. And I've pointed them out often on TikTok where, you know, women will talk about the rules of 6, and we can talk about there might be 3, there might be 4 or more of those. But, you know, to generalize it and to say that, like, all women want that or all men want this, like, of course that's not true. And that, you know, you can argue against that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that goes back to, so for those of us in our audience who don't know, Emily does all the TikToks for us because she's the TikTok queen. And, she edited a TikTok where all I said was most men, I don't know if this is verbatim or not, are not attracted to obese women.
Yes.
And I didn't get canceled, but it had to be close to 1 million views.
Yeah, it was over, I think.
Oh, over
like 1.5 million.
And
it keeps going up.
And but most of the comments were from women. And I just got attacked.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just for what I said.
Nope.
But it was my appearance.
Always.
And
they always start attacking the guy's appearance.
They actually attacked you a little bit too, because when I was saying that, you were laughing.
Oh, yeah. I bet they were.
Why is she laughing? And so it was something that, to me, that seems pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But it's something that, I don't know. Again, maybe I'm off base, but when I was saying that, my point of this whole little spot in this podcast is to say that it's something where, and there is that kind of double standard going on, that a guy can't even say that he doesn't like someone who is obese, which I think would be considered, I think about maybe 30% body fat. So we're talking about, it's pretty high.
Yeah.
Actually, probably maybe more for women, because women are, generally speaking, are about 10%.
Yeah.
So, for example, like if a guy had 10% body fat, the equality for women would be 20%.
Yeah.
So, so maybe it's not 30%, but it's high. It's considered to be unhealthy. And so me making a general statement like that, and then it was, maybe that's just your preference, or who wants you, and all this other stuff. And what I really, and you and I kind of talked this out a little bit, is that I struck a nerve, I think, with a lot of women, because the women who were responding were mostly obese.
Yeah, that's the thing, right?
I would say almost all. I was trying to look for a slimmer looking woman in the comments, and there was none.
So it's definitely because they're being triggered, right? And the TikTok was very much clipped, just to shorten that. Because then the next breath, you were talking about how women wouldn't prefer a man to be obese.
Exactly.
So you said, the opposite is true, so it goes two ways.
Yes.
So there probably wouldn't have been as much reaction in that case, if they heard both bits. But in any case, okay, there was a generalization there, but the feedback, if I saw a video like that, obviously I wouldn't be triggered. So I wouldn't relate to it, so I would just swipe on it and I wouldn't interact at all. Or secondly, I would just put in there I don't agree, and maybe my example. Maybe if I was obese, I'd say, well, my man is happy, or I'm dating successfully this guy of 2 years or whatever. Put in, proof, your own experience. You don't need to attack somebody, because I think that when you do that, so for women that didn't like hearing that you said that most men don't like obese women, they get triggered, and they're fighting against that and then getting personal with you. Well, what if like somebody like Matt said that? Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Like, what exactly would they say to him? Does that mean that the opposite is true? Is because like he's so good looking and his status is so high that he is allowed to say something like that? Because that would be the argument, right? If they're saying like, Todd, you can't say that because look at you, well, does that mean that you can look to somebody then that is traditionally like really attractive and he can say that?
I would think they would just use a different.
They would just use a different, right?
But because they couldn't use that one because it's so obvious. So it's where just, like I openly acknowledge I have flaws and I'm older and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But for him, it's something where they couldn't go at it from that angle.
Yeah.
But they would maybe then say his comedy sucked or or something like that.
They just find something.
Yeah. Or the only reason that he's popular is because he's good looking. So try to take away his intellect.
Oh, I can see that.
But I could see them. If hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
They'll find something.
Right?
They'll find a weakness.
Yes.
And just drill into it.
Exactly. So I think, that's what's going on right now is one, we have this double standard going on where women can openly talk about what they want and men can't. Mm-hmm. And this double standard about that, when it comes to certain preferences or things that women don't like, they can talk about that, but men can't.
Yeah. I mean, women openly talk about it. I can't tell you how many TikToks I've seen of the whole rule of sixes, right? That he makes a 6-figure income, that he's 6 feet tall, 6 inches.
Yeah. Well, there's that one creator who's really famous. I don't know her name. You might, but she does a lot of the dating advices, and she's mostly for women though. And she gets stitched a lot of times. You might have stitched her at one point. She will have different videos about what makes a high value man.
Yeah.
And she'll say he needs to make 6 figures for at least 3 years, things of this nature. Where can you imagine, again, a guy who was that specific versus this guy's just saying like, hey, I like big boobs and blondes, who doesn't like that, And so he's not saying she has to have the exact hip waist ratio 0.7 because that's the the ideal woman.
Yeah.
And she has to have an IQ of 130.
Right. These very specific things that would be very difficult for women to meet.
Yeah, exactly.
And this TikToker is doing exactly that.
Exactly.
She's making these benchmarks that are actually very difficult for a man to make.
And I would bet my life savings that most of her followers are women.
Oh, so, I'm positive.
So it's okay for her to go do this.
Yeah.
And honestly, though, I've never really seen that many guys stitch with her. I've seen women who are cool stitch her and put her on blast as far as some of the things that she's saying.
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing guys as much, and maybe that's just my algorithm. But it's something that it definitely, if she's kind of the spokesperson to a lot of women out there, then if she's got 1 million followers, that means there's 1 million people that agree with her style of thinking.
Yeah.
And that's just the ones that come across her or are even on TikTok.
And then there's going to be a subgroup that maybe agree a little bit, and then they keep getting her messages.
Exactly.
And that could actually influence them.
But, have you ever seen, when they've done, they would break down by demographics. So, for example, a guy who makes X amount of money, and then they put in the next filter, which would be he's 6 feet tall and whatever. And it ends up being 0.8% of the population. So all of this messaging that she's sending is harmful to women as well, because those type of guys just do not really exist.
No, and when you hear about these types of guys, when she speaks so often about them, and when anyone talks about them frequently on social media, it makes you think that there's a lot of these guys out there that have all of these things. They're earning a lot of money, and they're tall, and they're fit, and they're young. They're in your age range to where you could match with them. But that's not reality at all.
Yeah.
And I think it does hurt women because then their expectations go up, and they can't, it's harder for them to date somebody that's actually more on their level because they think that they're actually dating down when they're not. They're dating on their level.
Exactly. And that's where, unfortunately, they're delusional.
Yeah.
But again, I think it goes back to guys confirming this for them. So if guys, and this is and this is not really probably possible, but the only way to fix this particular issue would be for guys to not go there. Like if you're not attracted enough to be in a relationship with someone, then don't have sex with them.
No.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that if you do that, that's going to raise females' entitlement.
Yeah. I agree with that message because I already disagree with hookup culture. And so, there's that risk. And I think as a man, you hold a responsibility, especially if you know that you would not be attracted enough to this girl to actually date her. Because you know that pretty early on.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I need to get to know this girl and then decide.
No.
It's like, you could look at her and be like, well, yeah, we could do that, but I'm not going long term with her at all.
Exactly.
Like maybe if you were open and honest with her, like 90% of girls are not going to want to hook up with you then. Like maybe even 95% if you were like really honest and you're like, oh, it's because of your looks. I'm just not that attracted to you, for anything long term, but we could just spend a night together.
Yes.
Because most women want relationships. So that's going to be an automatic turnoff for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. I would think that most women want relationships, but if you have this expectation that you can get this certain type of guy because that guy is willing to kind of go there, then that, and many people may argue against this, but I really believe that then that resets people's expectations. Yeah,
because I think as a woman, like for a guy to hook up with you, you do think that there's a chance. That he'll go into a relationship with you. And
that's where I think guys are a little bit more grounded than women typically, because, for example, this might get me in trouble, but I honestly could, if I wanted to, get a 10 out of 10 woman. And I know you're going to say, like, are you insane? Like, but the reality is that it's just beta buxing. If I said I'm going to, pay you a lot of money or spend a lot of money on you, that could happen. But I'm not delusional to think that that woman is attracted to me for me at this stage of my life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but I think the difference is with women is that they feel that, okay, because I could have sex with this person, then that person is really into me. It's like the guy in the strip club, who says, the woman who says, oh, you're so handsome. And the guy, believes it.
Yes.
And so I think that's, kind of what's going on here with a lot of this.
I can see that. I can see a woman actually, believing that man is interested in her or that she can at least convince him to be, long-term with her. Because women do that all the time, like even in these situationships. First of all, they'll continue in them without any kind of defined relationship. And then even, for women that want to get married, like they'll end up in a relationship for 2 years in which they're just dating and then move in with him and then continue to wait for that ring. And like, I think that's telling, for a man not to move the relationship forward.
Yes.
There's a reason behind that. But women will continue on in a relationship because they think that they can just convince them. They can convince the man, that they're good enough for them. But it's not about that. It's not, unfortunately, it's not all about just who you are on the inside.
Well, but who you are on the inside makes a big difference too.
It
because
does.
The reality is that, for everybody, both genders, once you get past the looks threshold that you're attracted to the person, then you're going to look for other qualities. And you're going to say, is this person intelligent? Are they funny? Or do we share the same sense of humor? Do we have the same common interest? What do we like to talk about and do in our free times? There's all kinds of different variables. I would say for most men, there's people that are, kind of outside of this, but I would say generally speaking, are going to want a woman who is kind and caring and has feminine qualities.
I feel like for most people, it's obvious that they want those things from a partner. So like Matt Rife, I'm sure he wants those things.
Yeah.
Although he's also young, and he has a lot of options.
Yes.
So honestly, my personal opinion, right? So like if I was in my 20s and I was at all like on Matt's radar, let's say, from what I've seen with him, like I would not go in his direction. I would actually, and I don't mean that in a way of like, ooh, Matt's not good enough, like he's a red flag. I don't mean that at all. What I mean is like, where are you in life? And even in my 20s, I wanted a relationship long term. And I can look at him and say he's not going to be able to provide that.
Yeah.
Like he's in like the height of his career. It's just where
not
he's
even
at.
Probably. He's still
Maybe
ascending.
not.
And
You're
so
right.
I think, once he gets a Netflix special or something like that, he'll be
probably
a
will.
whole different level.
Yeah.
And so, but I think probably why you wouldn't, honestly, is because he has so many options.
Yeah.
And there's a good chance that he's probably not going to be faithful.
Yeah. And maybe that would be like, that's on me for insecurities, but I just think that is like, it increases the likelihood a man like that. And at least it's nothing, again, to say that he's a red flag. Like, we don't know what's happening in his relationships. It sounds like he's not trying to nail any of these women down for a long-term relationship. He's just out there, and the way that he talks on stage is he's like dating. And
Yeah.
so, probably going, for the
running
short
through
term.
women. Yeah, he's running through women right now.
Less vulgar way to say it. Short-term relationships. That's at least the feeling that I get from, the way that he talks about things.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah, I understand.
But it's just, are you a woman that wants that? And then
don't
go
you
his
think,
way.
Don't you think, though, that, we've had this discussion a little bit before, that if all of a sudden, let's say, take you back 10 years, 15 years even, and he's in your DMs because you're Emily King, who's got 2 point whatever million followers, and, you advocate for men, and so even though he's kind of in that stage, isn't there a little part of you that says, I can get him. I can be the one. Because I got clout on top of the fact of being attractive.
Yeah, I guess I don't think that highly of myself.
Okay.
I don't know. I think that it would be, it would make me feel good, I guess, that somebody of that quality was reaching out and potentially showing interest. I do think that would naturally be there.
Yeah.
But I would be extremely cautious.
Okay.
But what that takes.
Do you think your 22-year-old Emily would be that way, though?
Yeah, because remember, I was married at 21.
Yes, that's true.
But I do think that's rare, right? I think that most women, the majority of women, would totally go for that.
And that's what I'm saying is that with him, I have no idea what he's saying, but I doubt he's just saying, he could be, because this guy, has this type of power to say that, listen, I'm just, here for a short time, not a long time, or a good time, not a long time, or whatever. And, there'd be a lot of women who would still go there just because they would want to experience what it would be like with this guy.
I do agree with that. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so, but especially if the guy wasn't honest about his intentions.
That's a whole different story. Yeah.
But he doesn't need to be. But there's a lot of other guys who, are kind of in that Chad category. That's kind of what they're doing right now. And that's harming women because they're being disingenuous about their intentions.
Yeah. There's that I can see. And then also for guys that are on TikTok and they're like purposely creating thirst traps, I think the other things that I've seen is, them virtue signaling and trying to get as many women, like following them as possible. And you just know, like, for certain guys that are probably like a 10% guy and they're saying, that they like an older woman
or
they love single moms or, these are the top 10 reasons why I love dating a single mom. Like, you just kind of...
They're clout chasing.
Yeah.
And they're trying to build their audience
I think for a lot of them. Some of them, it makes sense. Like, some of them, if they're, like, single dads themselves. I don't mean those guys. Like, I mean, like the guy's in his 20s.
Yeah, I
and like
understand.
he has no interest in raising kids.
Yeah.
And you're going to tell me like the top 10 reasons why you love dating a single mom.
So I've never seen any of these videos, and so I'm sure they
It's
exist.
the women's side of TikTok.
Yeah.
The thirst trap side for women.
Okay. What's some possible solutions to this?
Yeah.
This kind of thing. Do we, as men, do we fight back and say, hey, we're allowed to have preferences too?
Yeah.
Or do we say that women, you shouldn't say this? Because I don't understand what the big deal is. This is, and again, maybe this is just me showing, I'm not a boomer, but it's that speaking of your truth about what you prefer and in a relationship, or what your preference is as far as how someone presents themselves. Why is this a big deal? Am I off base?
No, I agree with you. I don't think it should be a big deal. Again, if they're preferencing it with this is what I prefer,
Yes,
I think that's
exactly.
totally okay. And for somebody that has a huge following, like they can kind of talk about themselves. Like that's okay.
Exactly.
I think that they're allowed to. The problem is when it triggers you. I mean, I think that is going to be on an individual basis of being like emotionally intelligent enough to be scrolling TikTok and coming across something like that and getting triggered and like recognizing it for what it is and not needing to make a video or a stitch of him and then trying to cancel him.
Yeah, exactly.
And creating drama over it. I think that's unnecessary.
Yeah.
And it can't feel good. I mean, just to be on the attack for somebody having preferences.
I don't know. Do you think that it's going to get worse as far as like this specific situation goes, as far as build up?
Yeah.
Or do you think it's just going to kind of fizzle out?
I think for Matt's situation,
Yes.
I think it's going to fizzle out.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I don't know, he's such a good comedian.
Yeah.
I think like all of his other content is going to overpower any of this stuff.
Oh, I agree. And I think that the video that you're referring to was kind of a one-off.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of other women that had said something. There was actually a TikTok that you sent me of a woman who actually, ended up, talking about the other women, saying this guy has a right to his preferences.
Yeah, she defended Matt having preferences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's going on as far as being able to openly talk about that. And so I think it all comes down to, you think about it, when you get triggered by something, it's because of the fact that deep down you know that there's truth in it.
Yeah.
And so that's something where, I can experience that because honestly, like all of my life, like nobody has really attacked me for the way that I look. There's probably a lot of women that weren't attracted to me, but nobody's actually come out and said that. So when when hundreds of women said that, that was really uncomfortable just because it wasn't something that I experienced. But I didn't have that kind of visceral reaction.
Yeah, right. You didn't like go on the attack.
No, I didn't go on the attack and say,
defend.
whatever.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that was something that I think probably in their minds, if they saw me saying that, they would say, if this guy is saying this, what's the guys that I'm really attracted to, for example, thinking?
Yeah. And that's why they got so triggered.
That's why they got so triggered.
Yeah.
And so, but my point is that, like me, I consider myself, an average guy, normie, and he's a Chad guy. My point is that, like, nobody's absolved from this.
No. And the truth is, going back to those women, is that there has to be truth there. You're right. And they have to feel like that's an insecurity already.
Exactly.
Because if the truth of their life was that they're obese and they're dating and they're doing fine, or they're in a happy relationship, I don't think there'd be any desire there, even for them to be obese themselves, but they're in a happy place.
Yeah.
They're not going to feel the need. All they're going to be thinking is like, oh, well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And swipe.
Exactly. Well, my thought process, what if I said, instead of most men aren't attracted to obese women, what if I said most men are not attracted to women who have hourglass shapes? right?
Yeah.
What do you think people would say then? This guy is
Like, you're just wrong.
Delusional.
You're delusional.
He's he's not in touch with what men want at all, and so they would.
Yeah.
Do you think the hourglass woman would come in there and start
Get
attacking
triggered.
me? Exactly.
You're so right. That's a really solid point. No, it wouldn't happen.
Exactly. Nothing would have happened. It probably would have got average number of views.
Yeah, or below.
Or below. And if anything, it would have been guys attacking me for being delusional.
Yeah.
You know,
Just being flat out wrong.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
no curvaceous hourglass women would be going in there and saying, "You're ugly," or whatever. You know, who do you get? The type of thing.
Right, because the reality of their experience in their life is they're doing just fine.
Absolutely.
They are finding plenty
Yeah,
of guys
exactly.
that want to be with them.
Exactly. And what am I talking about?
Yeah.
And so if anything, they would just maybe put a laughing emoji or something like that, but not to the point of personally attacking me.
Yeah, no.
Do you know what I mean?
It wouldn't happen. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, are there guys that have different preferences? Absolutely. There's, it's all over the board for sure.
Yeah.
But again, we're talking about long-term kind of pair bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also talking about what a guy's ideal preferences are. It doesn't mean that they could satisfy them.
Right.
So for example, like my strategy of potentially like beta bucksing someone, like that's a terrible strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Because like the reality is that that's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
And so it's something that if people aren't honest about, kind of where they kind of stand in the dating market with themselves, that's where it ends up causing a lot of issues a lot of times.
Oh, right. So I could see that. So let's say like a man that's a high earner, but is also older, he might think that he can just get any young girl that's like a 10 out of 10 using his money. Mm-hmm. And that's risky, then if he like actually believes that she is into him like physically.
Yeah.
Like that's not the full truth of the story.
No, the reality is that does happen sometimes where people actually get together. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that if that guy's money was gone, she'd be out the door before, the account got closed.
Yeah.
And so it's something where if there's guys out there who are in this position who want short term, go for it, but and I worked with a guy who was like this perfect case study for this. So he was, I think probably around 65 maybe, and his wife was maybe 30,
Wow.
30, early 30s, and they had a daughter together.
Wow.
And what happened is the reason he came to see me is she then monkey branched onto a younger guy.
Oof.
And so where I almost looked at the guy and said, you couldn't see this a mile coming, because, but the fact is they were together for like a good 10 years before that happened.
Yeah.
But let's say he was in his early 50s and he was still okay. Mm-hmm. And he also, had good resources. Mm-hmm. And she was in her early 20s at that point.
Right.
That might work out short term, but long term, there's not going to be a lot of difference in the way you look between 20 and 30 for a woman. But the way that she thinks and what she's attracted to, and also the dating market has shifted, it's something where, from a guy's point of view, there's a lot that changes between 50 and 65.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could see that.
Exactly.
And then once he went through those changes, she started changing her mind a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so the reality is that, they ended up getting divorced, and it wasn't a good situation for him in the long run because he barely got to see his daughter then.
Yeah, I'm sure
she ended up moving out of state.
Oh no!
And she was a 10-year-old girl.
And I'm sure he was still paying.
Yeah.
Boatloads of child support.
Of course.
Yeah.
But she was moved in with this other guy who she had started dating prior to, them actually, getting to the point where she walked out.
Yeah, it's terrible. So you think that it's better for guys to really be realistic
Oh,
and don't like live in
100%.
this fantasy that, you
No.
know, this
I
young
think-
woman really wants you
Yeah.
for just, you know, who you are.
I think most guys, honestly, they can have all the preferences they want, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if they're going for a relationship, what they should go for is somebody who is at their SMV level or a little bit below.
Yeah.
That's going to be their best long-term chance. And so that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of guys. And guys know this. That's why they, go even lower sometimes, just because of the fact that they realize that they're not going to be able to get that,
Yeah.
And so, and yeah, there are, some situations and some delusional situations out there where, guys will think this, but in the long term, it usually doesn't work out.
Yeah. I can see that's a really risky situation to try to really go for your ideal preference. I guess on the flip side of that, same goes for a woman, right?
course.
And that's what we're saying is that, maybe you could get that top 10% guy short term, but that doesn't mean it's going to lead into a relationship. And it's probably going to be more harmful to you than anything else if
Yeah.
you're, going to go for that and you participate in hookup culture.
Yeah. And the reality is, though, like with this specific guy,
Yeah.
is that because he's so high up in that food chain, he doesn't have to go very low to get his hookups even.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like he could because of the fact that he is now, pretty famous and that he's got this blue check mark and the looks and things like that. I'd be willing to bet that he could go on Instagram and go and into any female Instagram models DMs and just kind of swap out different 9s and 10s.
Absolutely.
Right. So he's
Yeah.
not. So the women who are like getting triggered by this,
Yeah.
he wouldn't go near them anyways.
Yeah. Oh, I watched this one video that just reminded me of Matt was like backstage and he was saying hi to his fans.
Okay.
And he got like next to another girl and she's standing there and going to take a photo with him. And she asks him to kiss her cheek. And he goes, "No, I don't do that." So he had like a boundary set there.
Uh-huh.
He's like, "But you can kiss mine." And so
Uh-huh.
that's what she does
Uh-huh.
for the photo. I'm like, that's a power move.
Yeah.
I'm not going to kiss you, lady, but you can kiss my cheek.
Yeah. And what's that demonstrating too? That's simping.
Yeah, absolutely. She
Yeah.
was like clearly simping,
Exactly.
swooning over him.
Yeah, because she's not really getting anything back in return.
No.
Because there's a big difference between him kissing her in a photo that she posts on Instagram
Yeah.
or whatever
Yeah.
versus her kissing him.
And he knows that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Good.
So I think we'll be really interested to hear from our viewers what they think about preferences. If you guys have enjoyed this video, please remember to hit the subscribe button and watch the next video.